Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Astral Jewels. Glad that you could join me again. I'm going to continue on with the Inner Work series. And today it is on the topic of karma. So karma and you. So this is probably something that you've heard before, this statement of karma. Are you someone who has done the right thing for the right reason, the wrong thing for the right reason, the right thing for the wrong reason, or the wrong thing for the wrong reason? Pondering on your actions in terms of reason can actually be confusing. The mind can be really quite confusing. The forces of karma come into play when you have put your will into something that is out of integrity. Karma, by definition, is an act of will by you that has created a negative outcome. This negative outcome can be to the detriment of others and will always include the detriment of yourself. How you are overcome or pay your dues of the karma is not the same as an emotional issue like the trauma of the mind, which is called a samskara. But it can often seem like it is, as if it is an emotional issue and trauma. Karma actually feels like punishment. In effect, it sort of is. Your actions are subject to cause and effect. It's like you mucked up and you did it willfully, some unwillfully, but they still did it, and they had consciousness that they were doing something wrong. In a natal astrology chart, the minor angle, and many of you will have never heard of this term at all, this word. The minor angle is known as the sesquisquare, which is an angle of 135 degrees between planets. And the sesquisquare often indicates karmic issues. This angle indicates karma you have brought with you, and it will play a part in your life whether you realize it or not. Now, I have studied the effects of karma, and I no longer regard this angle as minor. For me, it's major, particularly if you are undergoing a life of consciousness studies and transformation. They generally go together. So to me, these are major angles which I've come to take quite seriously. And it's been my experience many times that karmic returns can manifest as incidents and accidents in your life. And, that's from stubbing your little toe or your car breaking down to an actual car crash. These can be indicators of a karmic return. Not always, but many people who have had these experiences, they just know, they have this knowing that it's to do with karma. And I've heard gurus and spiritual teachers brush off these karmic incidences or, flippantly take them as the consequences of past actions. Now, often it is said that karma is complex and you can be excused for not understanding your karma because of the complexity of it. Often there is a feeling of the karmic incident being resolved and you no longer have to worry about it. The problem with the forces of the sesquisquare in the chart is that the forces remain a restricting influence in your astral experience throughout your life. It's in your thoughts and emotions. A player in your game. And when I was studying and mapping the sesquisquare, I was continually hit by a block that felt like the lords of karma or the lords of destiny were holding a placard that said, you are not to use these forces in the same way as you did before. This just kept coming over and over and over again as I was mapping this stuff. And true to form, the forces of the sesquisquare are actually not flowing as you'd like them to. It's as if you are continually hitting a wall when it comes to achieving things in life. You know, despite all your efforts, the problem or problems you seem to face remain unresolvable. The problem is that you are missing something about how you are going about resolving the problem. You know, it may not be just a therapy session. There might be way more to it than you realize, and you need to find out. So a square in astrology is a 90-degree angle between planets in the natal chart, and it indicates an incarnating force or a challenge. It's a force that is prominent in your actions. The sesquisquare is also a challenge, but there seems to be a notice saying, you know, like that placard, don't do it again. Don't do it like a square, like that challenge. Don't make the same mistake. There is a notice of caution that doesn't seem to go away. You know, it's like the lords of karma are demanding a correction. And by correction, it means placing integrity into your actions as an intention. Now, I did a lot of work on mapping karma and, you know, particularly the forces involved in the sesquisquare. And as I was doing these mapping practices, it was a continual message that just kept coming over and over again. And I wanted it to be a different answer, and it just continually came. And, you know, I felt I was on the right track when I was getting the downloads in regard to, you know, these karmic issues. So, you know, again, the messages were coming, you know, learn from the error and don't repeat it. Overcome the charged reaction and find your integrity. You know, of course, you can't change what you cannot see. So understanding your karma and your attempts to overcome and move forward is important to a fulfilling life. Of course it is, right? Now, there are similarities between samskaras and karma. So with both, there will be a charged emotional reaction. If it's a samskara, which is, a samskara is, it's a Hindu term, which means, stands for a scar of the mind. And you know, say you drowned in a past life, you have a fear of swimming or boating, going out on a boat. You source the fear and get clarity on it. This is with the normal samskaras, right? Issues. And once the emotional wound is sorted out, you move forward as the block has been resolved. The fear is dissolved, usually completely. You may still have a caution about water, but it's nothing like it was. You know, this is pretty normal. to have, you have the lesson and you go, okay, I've got to be more careful around water because I drowned in the past, right? That's a normal samskara or scar of the mind, and you can overcome them and off you go, right? Karma is different to the normal woundedness, and karma is often as a result of a traumatic event where the reaction is one where you used your will in an aggressive or assertive form of action, or the direct opposite, a willful withdrawal of a force to the point of complete inaction or non-action. You either went completely left of center or completely right of center. You lost your ability for sanity, so to speak. More commonly we think of karma as a punishment for something we did wrong. Often seen as, it's often seen as an act of violence or making a decision as a powerful person that creates the suffering of others. The most common of these is the dictator character that so many feel they were in a past life. It's amazing how many people felt they were dictators in their past life. It's quite common. I've had a lot of them. The opposite is also true. If you were in a traumatic situation and were the victim of crime or the actions of someone else, and you willfully succumbed to not fighting when you actually could have fought, you are also creating karma. With the process of a transformative life, it will require discernment when seeking clarity on what is a samskara and what is karma. So what's a normal traumatic issue versus what is karma? Okay, so remember, a samskara is a scar of the mind. You resolve, you decharge the emotion and move through, hopefully into the higher elements of a force once you've straightened out your issue. With karma, you seek clarity, find integrity, and navigate these forces to ensure you don't repeat the same mistake. You don't not use the force, you put integrity into it consciously. So remember, conscious awareness is everything. It's very important. The wonderful Junique and I speak about that often. Conscious awareness is major. There'll be similarities that you need to watch out for. Both have emotional charges, and both will have at the helm a part of you that will not want to get to the core of the problem. That's really common with resistance of the mind. It just doesn't want to go there. Denial. It's in the moving through where there is a difference. You could say you could say it's splitting hairs, as with both the trauma and the karma, you have a tendency not to repeat mistakes of the past. So there are similarities. Both feel like a wound. Placing consciousness into karma helps you accept your past mistakes, learn from them, and learn how to navigate around situations so you don't repeat them. There will be a sense with the forces of the sesquisquare, the karmic element, that helps you by not flowing in the normal way. Means it is restricted. No matter how hard you try, the forces just don't flow. And it's probably because you can't see the karmic element to the restriction. That's why there's this jolted stop in what it is you're trying to achieve. It's amazing how that actually happens. And until you see it, you're just frustrated because why are things not working out the way that you want them to? The scenarios of karma can be very confusing. And the simplistic statement of cause and effect are actually very true. And this is a quote from Newton, Isaac Newton, who says, "For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction." So a common scenario would be a good-intentioned person fulfilling a task that was to be performed by someone else. As a result, the person who was meant to fulfill the task didn't learn a skill, didn't learn responsibility, and didn't earn the right to take credit for the accomplishment. Now, remember in the podcast on generosity, giving, and caring, I spoke about putting awareness into your actions and contemplating your reasons for your generosity. As an example, your giving. And I'm bringing it up because you will know this. You will know this saying most likely. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. And if you continue to do good deeds for the same person, but don't create the space for that person to learn for themselves, you may be accumulating karma for yourself. Similarly, if the person you are giving fish to always takes the fish and doesn't bother to learn how to provide for himself, then he too will accumulate karma. Two things can happen here. The person who fulfilled the task has created karma for disempowering the person they helped. The person who was helped has also created karma for not stepping up and becoming competent and building structured knowledge for the next time they had to complete the task. Or was it that the helped person knew how to do it, but didn't know how to stop the helper? I can do it. No, don't do it. And they didn't know how to say, stop, I'll do it. No, I've got this. Rhyme and reason has many complex angles. And you need to start learning all these different complexities, these different angles, why you do what you do. So this very much goes into that previous podcast on, on the caring and the giving, your compassion and generosity. So being aware of how to undo karma is something that's important. The spiritual seeker who believes in reincarnation, they generally do, has a vested interest in undoing karma and not accumulating more of it. The immortal soul depends on purity. To cleanse the soul of karma, there needs to be an understanding of how past actions have played a role in this present incarnation. Regardless of your beliefs, what is right and wrong is still subject to cause and effect, and the response times to your karmic attracting event can be very quick. How many times have you had somebody do, something terrible to you, or you saw them do it to someone else, and you've made that statement, I hope the karma is quick. It's getting faster. I've noticed this myself, that it'll come back and hit you very, very quickly. So start being aware of when it comes back and hits you, because you need to do some work, some inner work, and start getting clarity on why that happened and how you can do it better or differently. So going back to astrology, have you considered why you have the astrology chart that you have? You know, many astrologers align this explanation to the knowledge of karma. You attract your chart because of your past actions. You incarnate at a particular time, at a particular location, to particular parents, where you get the greatest opportunity to overcome your karma and have experiences that hopefully lead to higher states of consciousness. Within your astrological blueprint are the forces that will enable this achievement. And having a conscious awareness of the chart, therefore, makes this difficult journey easier, because you've got it there in black and white and you can see it. Like attracts like. Now, I want to read here some work of Rudolf Steiner. And in his talk on karma and heredity, he says, and this refers to like attracts like, you know, the laws of attraction, conscious or unconscious, generally unconscious as you're here, but consciously before you incarnate. Now, Steiner says, how is the law of karma related to physical heredity? Physical heredity plays a great role, and we know that some of the characteristics of a father and his ancestors may be found again in the son. In the Bach family, for instance, there were 28 highly gifted musicians in a period of 250 years. Again, a guy by the name of Bernoulli was a great mathematician, and 8 other gifted mathematicians came after him in his family. This is all a matter of heredity. But that is only partially true. In order to be a good musician, you need more than a musical predisposition in your soul. You need also a good ear in the physical sense. And this good ear is a physical quality to be found in a family of musicians and is passed on from one generation to the next. In a family, then, where a great deal of music is performed, you will find good musical ears. And so when a soul with a strongly developed musical talent is to be incarnated, it will naturally not choose a family with no interest in music, where it would languish, but one which has suitable physical organs. And this fits in very well with the law of karma. The same thing applies to moral courage. If a soul with that predisposition cannot find a suitable heredity, the characteristic will fade out in you. So you can see that you have to be very careful in your choice of parents before you incarnate. And the fact is not that the child resembles his parents, but that he is born into a family where the parents most resemble him. We're all wise and wonderful before, as spiritual beings before we incarnate. So if you were to study your chart and compare it to either of either or both of your parents, even your siblings, you would see similarities. Then studying their personality traits with yours, again, you will see striking similarities. Of course, many people are in denial of this because they loathe the thought of being anything like their parents or their siblings. But honest introspection will show that you have not dodged the heredity factor. If you're loathing what you're seeing in your parents and your siblings, it's because you're not owning the fact that you too have some similar traits and you're projecting. You're not owning your crap. You know, there is a deliberateness to this attraction in order for you to work on your karma. And in doing so, you are transforming your astral body and in turn benefiting from a more fine-tuned soul, and a soul that has many forces at its disposal. This is the evolution of the soul that's going on here. So another excerpt from Rudolf Steiner is worth including in this podcast. This refers to archetypes. Archetypes are the unfallen versions of us. An archetype is defined as the perfect prototypes out of which the seeds of things and beings originate. Perfection and purity, of course, are interchangeable here. Archetypes are in the pre-manifested worlds. You've got to get cosmic here in your thinking. Archetypes are in the pre-manifested worlds, which, as you can see, is not where we are now. We're not in the purity. We are subject to many emanations of our essence, which would now appear to be corrupted in the life we are in now, in this present incarnation. Karma, therefore, is part of the corruption that we are trying to rectify within ourselves. And Steiner writes, another thing we must realize is that we can't be unegoistical. We are never, ever unegoistical. And even if we imagine that we've done something that's entirely selfless, we're mistaken. We can't act selflessly. It's world karma that lets us act egoistically. And world karma is God. Part of the all that is. And if we get to the point where we act in a good and noble way, then it's God in us who is good. And as we get more selfless, we'll, for instance, notice that we don't get scared or terrified anymore. This is part of the transformation. If you've had shocking experiences as a child, if there's a sudden loud noise nearby, with transformation, we won't jump as much as before. The God who lets us act in a good and noble way is our model. Our archetypal model made us into what we are now, and we must become a copy of our archetype again. This is reaching nirvana, ultimately. It's going back to the essence of who we are, the unfallenness, the purity. We've got to clean up our karma, though. You know, life is about having experiences. gaining knowledge and dealing with limitations. That's life. It is about learning about and dealing with our emotions and feelings. Learning about emotions, learning about feelings. That's the human experience. We have many and varied experiences as both male and females in different countries, aligning with different customs and ethnicities. That's life. The sum total of all our incarnations is what we're sitting with here. And karma is what ties you here to the cycle of death and rebirth. So with Steiner's model, all your transformed elements continue on with you into spiritual realms and is available for you when you reincarnate again. So here we have the desire to ensure we are overcoming difficulties via our experiences and ensuring our soul is evolving. You're going to see the bigger picture, which requires that awareness and consciousness, why you do what you do. Way bigger picture. So I want to look at creating karma and then navigating karma and ensuring we don't keep accumulating it. This is life's journey, really, as we are seeing it. And this meme I saw, it was probably on Facebook or something similar, and it made me think of all those people who are burying their heads in the sand over what is going on in the world. It says the only thing worse than a blind follower is a seeing denier. This is the recipe for creating karma. So the blind followers, the sleepers, are likely to get a little reprieve, just a little one, because of the power of being programmed since birth. We know not everyone is going to wake up, and they have, some people have no idea that they even had to wake up. And they will go through, another incarnation that does not see them completely sleeping through life. And perhaps they're even young souls. Who knows where people are really at in their soul evolution? Those who were, on the other hand, told or even had an inkling that things did not add up, that things were not right, and they were presented with a choice to look further into why they had those feelings but chose not to dig deeper, are likely to be the ones who suffer karmic consequences. Denial is not wanting to know and choosing to remain ignorant because it's more comfortable. So there is a lot of karma to be dished out in the afterlife after you wake up and realize, oh my God, I mucked up. And let's hope the world those ignorant people incarnate into is not as deceptive as this life is. And time will tell. Time will tell for those people. Who knows what's going to happen? Hey. So now I'm going to read a scenario I've seen often when working on karmic issues with clients. Firstly, this is from the book Dune. And it reads, though Paul was supposed to be the hero of Dune, he became the failed hero of Dune Messiah, a hero who got drenched in the stench of his failure as emperor. So the author Frank Herbert used June Messiah to highlight the negativity of heroism. In his opinion, heroes who fail to recognize their humanity fall into an abyss of desolation forged from the failures they encounter once realism dawns on them. This scenario can apply to anyone who was put in a position of leadership and power, say as the head of an army, leading soldiers. Power can do terrible things to the psyche. Power without integrity is just an abomination, really. So the astrological forces involved here can be the Mars and Sun, and also Saturn. There are others, and it depends on the depths of where leadership goes wrong. And I've had clients who were, in regression, of course, who regressed into a space where they were leading armies of men to the front line of wars, only to send them to their deaths. There were leaders who did this consciously knowing it was going to happen. Then there were those leaders who went to the front line with their men and were slaughtered with their men. The guilt and shame felt in the afterlife wanderings of these people is very heavy and can be literally soul destroying. These levels of emotion can erase any good a person has done in their life. They can have difficulty accessing other parts of their psyche as a means of balancing their negative emotions. The abyss of desolation is a good term. And anyone who has endured a dark night of the soul in its absolute heaviest of spaces will comprehend what I'm saying here. The abyss of desolation. It's a horrid, horrid, dark space. And this is often what happens to people who have to clean up their karma. They will go through these spaces with a lot of guilt and shame. In future lives, or at least, their next life, the repercussions can mean the person refuses to take up responsibility for others. These people can remain in a position of continually standing back and never stepping up. They are ridden with shame for themselves, and so that can bring out the I'm not good enough character, which is often very close at hand. And it's a dominating personality trait. It's very, very, very common. So that is a self-dumping of heavy energies on yourself. The shame and guilt can be so bad that they are continually seen as a victim of any circumstances because they believe they deserve to be bullied. Makes me wonder, with people that are enduring narcissists as to why are you attracting that? Why are you in this circumstance? Remember, like attracts like. There's something really necessary to learn by those experiences. And remember, the dark forces at play here will be feeding off the melee of this person, feeding off the negative emotions, the loosh. And this will reinforce the problem You know, dark forces place you in the mindset of reinforcing your negative emotions. That's how they keep a good food supply. Your loosh being in a continual supply is the aim of dark forces. They don't want to starve. They're feeding off your negative emotions. They're feeding off your misery. So a person who has accumulated this type of karma may take several lives to overcome it. And it is not about not being a leader. It's not about not taking responsibility. This person will need to accept the consequences of his or her actions, forgive himself, and step forward again in the future, which will take effort and a lot of courage, but it will also need humbleness, which is often missing in people these days. You know, you think, excuse the French, you think your shit doesn't stink, but everyone's does. Everyone's been through negative emotions and negative experiences. And, you know, it's false pride that doesn't want to admit that they were perhaps a murderer in a past life, or that they actually did send many, many people to their deaths in war. And to go towards forgiving yourself for being the person who did that takes a lot of humbleness of being a human being, because we have done atrocities, terrible, terrible things. This is another example, and one that I found to be quite common. And I'm using the forces of Saturn and Neptune. And some, I'm pretty sure some will really be able to relate to this. Now, I've seen this in regression a lot, and it's often by people who are on a spiritual quest of some sort. And it explains why some people just refuse to go into doing spiritual work, because of their past reactions to their past lives. So this one here, primarily the force, this force together, the Saturn Neptune, enables the ability to create structure, which is the Saturn, in experiences deemed nebulous, which is the Neptune. Now, this includes a spiritual or metaphysical landscape. This combination gives great scope to be able to make sense of that which is difficult to make sense of, which is a Neptunian space. So Saturn is all about building structures and learning, while Neptune is the opposite force of spreading and letting go. So Neptune is about angelic experiences, you know, white fluffy clouds and flying in spaces. You know, it's astral traveling and space traveling. The two together can create tension, and is often difficult to find a balance in how to handle them. You have to get into the higher modes of these for them to work really well, and they do work very well once you've nailed the negatives and got into the positives. This force is fantastic. So when these forces come together in a karmic angle, you'll be required to reflect and delve into your own psyche, as is needed for self-awareness with any experience that needs some clarity or resolution. You've got to go inward, inner work. So with this set of forces, you're likely to oscillate between thoughts of idealism, dreams and wishes and great ideas that could make life wonderful, but then you fall prey to restricting thoughts of reason that block creativity, because if it's not done right, Saturn, And if there's no good purpose for the creation, Saturn, then it's not worth doing. You can be the miser, Saturn, of your idealism, cutting yourself off because of restrictive thinking. The sway from what you think is right and the drive for perfection, which includes doing things perfectly, to the daydream of the ideal, can do your head in at times. The struggle is real and can result in inner frustration. The paradox here is Saturn, the highest mode of Saturn is purity. And Neptune is a way of getting towards it. But down here in this fallen creation, there's a massive frustration that goes on. So look to your past and your present. How often have you dreamt of something you wanted only to dismiss it? Have you thought good things only happen to other people? You know, what if I did something crazy? What would people think of me? Will I be judged as stupid? You know, is there a fear of stepping outside the square? Will I be made to feel ashamed of what I think or do if I were to do something different? Will my mates laugh at me? Look to see if your upbringing involved shame and guilt, or you were brought up to be a worker, to get a good job, or to be a certain way because that's what you were supposed to do. Saturn can stand for authority figures, often the father, but could also be the mother if she was the authority figure, demanding you conform a certain way. Have you been subjected to the idealism that belonged to someone else? You know, maybe you wanted to be a singer or an artist and it got knocked out of you. No. Get a real job. This can be the Saturn Neptune. This can be your Neptune is squashed by the Saturn force of, you know, doing the right thing, generally by someone else, or it relates to your fears. You know, often you may have had urges to pursue a path of meditation and obtaining esoteric knowledge, only to dismiss the urges as being ridiculous or even unattainable. You know, this can be learned behavior, as often these desires, particularly in these times of materialistic pursuits, are put down by society as nonsense. Yet, great scientific minds have openly spoken about their spiritual experiences and belief in a higher power. You know, nonetheless, the ability to be vulnerable and pursue metaphysics often takes courage to defy societal norms. So a Saturn-Neptune association has great promise where you actually have the know-how or structure to achieve any of your dreams. With the karmic angle, a scenario could be that you may have attempted a life in the past of aesthetics and failed because of a lack of knowledge or a lack of faith or even a lack of trust. Maybe you were going for enlightenment and you failed. Maybe you had a belief system and you did everything by the book and you failed. You failed to get what you thought you were going to get. That can create karma. Not doing that again. What a waste of time that was, being on my knees, that a lifetime of being on my knees. and it failed. So you think. In this life may give you the opportunity to achieve high levels of consciousness, but this time you are led to do it by using a methodical way of attaining it. Saturn will give you a methodical way. If you are avoiding it but have a desire for it, set about making it happen. If the desire is always at the back of your mind and you're dismissing it, you need to have a go, because it could be, it's your fear of failure that's not allowing you to move forward. And you have to see that and go, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it a go. Maybe, you were an airhead in a past life and now need a good dose of Saturn structuring knowledge to get your head straight. That's a good Saturn Neptune trait. Neptune people can be total airheads. They're too out there. They're not grounded. Saturn gives structure to get you grounded, and actually your spiritual experiences are way better for it. And the other more common experience with the Saturn-Neptune association in karma is that in past lives, you have relied heavily on spiritual forces, but did not take ownership of your part in this association. Maybe you spent years of your life in prayer only to find that in your death you did not go where you were expecting to go. And maybe you expected enlightenment, but it didn't happen. People make decisions in their afterlife wanderings in line with their reactions to the life they have just left. So if you didn't reach nirvana and are shocked and disappointed because you thought you did everything right to get there, the result could be a complete lack of trust in God or the divine. This can happen. In this life, this lack of trust can impede your spiritual practices where you hold back from allowing spiritual help at all. The karmic angles in your chart tend to direct your life by not allowing you to use the forces involved to repeat errors of the past. This can be frustrating because your human programming and the environment you are brought up in influences your thinking. Yet the forces involved can go against that influence and against your desires and intentions. They can lead you in opposite directions, which seems frustrating at first. But hindsight shows the direction you were led into is the best for you. It's in your best interests. And this can feel frustrating. And what transpires are experiences that make you deal with your karma. There are many scenarios of how karma plays out. A baby who was abandoned at birth could have had that experience because as a mother in a previous life, they treated their child badly, or the person in this life needed to learn, how not to be reliant on the mother. Many experiences can play out. And it's all cause and effect. I have repeatedly had confirmation of this in meditation and visions. You know, plus applying it to my own experiences has also confirmed this. You know, I have 3 chapters of karma involving 8 planets in my chart. So I'm getting heaps of experiential practice with karma. In the early stages of my transformation journey, I was not even looking at karma. I wasn't even going there. I just thought everything was, you know, my emotions due to traumas and stuff like that. And, you know, I thought if I could resolve them, life would be good. But it wasn't until later on that I saw things just, you know, this lack of flow when things should have flowed and they weren't. I just had to go, what's going on? And then I started looking at my own chart more deeply and looked at this, what's known as a minor element. And I found that I had 3 chapters of karma. And when I delved into that, I got so much clarity on why things were not working. And then I had to work on the karma. There's one that I haven't figured out yet, and I'm still doing that. There's 2 chapters that I've fully played out in my life, and I have clarity on them. And now I'm walking forward, navigating the space of it, making sure that I'm not repeating errors of the past. And it's fascinating the decisions that you make, and how I was continually stuffing up. I was continually trying to use those forces in a particular way, and it just wasn't happening. It took a lot of delving and navigating for me to start getting it right. In the process of all of this, I've managed to do all the interpretations of each planetary angle in their karmic position. And the intention is to put them, I've got good intentions here, guys. I hope I don't earn karma if I don't do it. But I have the intention of putting it into all these karmic interpretations into a reference book. And, you know, it'll all take a lot of time and a lot of work. And the interpretation so far has been a lot of work. But I now include karma in the natal charts of clients, which is helpful for those who are doing serious inner work in this life. So it's part of what I discuss with clients as to how to get to get through the challenges that they are experiencing. Awareness of why you do what you do is a major asset. Be aware, being aware, and taking responsibility for your decisions and your actions will help you to balance the karmic ledger. There is a ledger. There certainly is a ledger. And I am a testament to that ledger because of those 3 chapters that I am experiencing. Certainly not easy. Certainly hasn't been easy, but you know, I had past life regressions myself, which showed one past life where I was murdered. I was actually murdered. I was a male, and I was a spiritual teacher, and I was murdered by a jealous husband. And when he stabbed me, I believe it was in the heart, and as a consequence of, in the space, in my death space, I blamed myself for what had happened because I was the teacher, I was the guru, right? Why didn't I see what was going on? And this is what happens with a lot of teachers and gurus out there. You're put on a pedestal. So I was put on a pedestal by this one of the women that I was teaching. This is way, way, way back. We were doing these practices in tents. So, it was a long, 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 long time ago. And I think it was post the time of Jesus. And as a teacher, teachers make mistakes, by God, and I certainly did. And I'm thinking, why did I place myself in this position? Why didn't I see what was going on? Why this man felt that he had to kill me? I blamed myself for it. And I went to my afterlife wanderings and my death space, totally berating myself for not seeing. I dumped on myself big time. And then I tried to fix that life. I went into another life. I was a woman and I was a scientist, female scientist. And it was something like the 17th century. And 17th, 18th, something like that. And women were not given credit for their intelligence. So I was sort of working underneath a male scientist, but I was doing amazing work, but he was getting all the credit. But I was doing it as like an atonement. That if I created things for humanity and everything was wonderful, then I wouldn't be killed. Nobody would kill me. Nobody would stab me in the heart. But I still had the chip on my shoulder of why didn't I see? And also that making atonement was the wrong way of thinking. And in that community, I was in a community, as you normally are, so it was city, town, whatever. The associates that were around me, I was disheartened because they weren't appreciative of the work that I was doing. And I actually left that community, and I ended that life very much alone and on my own, and as a way of feeling that it was better than being in a community that didn't appreciate who I was. So that life, I also created karma. So it became this spiraling event from being stabbed for being a good teacher, not seeing, blaming myself. And this can happen. You can have spiritual teachers that stuff up. That's why the saying, the teacher is always the student. You never, ever, ever stop being the student, because you can stuff up. And there have been many spiritual teachers, and I was one of them, that went to their life totally fucked up. I fucked it up. And the next life, I also messed up. And it's this life that I am correcting all of my karma. Hence, I've got the 3 chapters in my chart. So I have a lot of awareness on how the forces of karma can play out. It's fascinating to go there. And there's a question why some people say, well, how do you know that it's actually a real past life? There's a level of, there is a knowingness. I just know that was a past life. And even if it wasn't, you have these experiences in regression where you see yourself in certain situations, and you can call that a past life or not. What's important is what you learn from what you see. What is that telling me? What is that past life telling me? What's it showing me? So who gives a toss whether you were Cleopatra in a past life? Because it appears that there are thousands of people that were Cleopatra, for example. That's not the point. The point is, why am I seeing that now? And what am I supposed to learn from that? Why is that coming into my consciousness, into my reality? What is it that I have to see? So that is the level that I took my visions on, I call them past lives. So they were very real, and the experiences were very, very real. They came into my consciousness quite easily, and I could fit them to my experiences in this life. So I could connect the dots as to why I was having experiences in this life, and then set about rectifying them. And initially I thought they were just normal samskaras, blocks, emotional blocks because of terrible things that were happening. But it wasn't until later that I discovered, hang on, there's more to it than this. They were actually karmic issues. And I set about getting a lot of clarity on what they were. And now I can navigate forward differently than if it was just an emotional trauma. And it takes a level of emotional maturity to actually deal with your karmic issues. And the same with all your emotional negative blocks that you have. It takes emotional maturity. And who is it? Matthias De Stefano. He's one of the only people that I've listened to that puts a lot of energy into the positives of having emotional experiences as humans. And he basically says that is actually part of the human experience, the emotional side of it. And it makes an enormous amount of sense. Many arms of religion and spiritual teachings are always going about overcoming the emotional issues as if they talk about it as if the emotion is the problem. Well, in essence, it is, if your reactions, your emotional reactions, are creating block after block and creating karma. Well, it's a problem. But emotional maturity is one of the end goals. You can have emotions, but what you do with those emotions and what you do in terms of reactions has enormous consequences. So cause and effect. So being aware of what happens when you throw a tantrum or whatever in terms of your emotional experience. Be aware of what that's doing to other people and also yourself. It's important. So you're not going to get rid of emotions. You are going to transform yourself. That's the aim. That's the aim. Okay, another big one, guys, on karma. Karma. So I'll leave it here for today. There's a lot to ponder in terms of karma for yourself. So if you've liked this podcast, please like, thumbs up, share, all that. Place your comments below, all of those things. So I'd like to thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time, okay, with another topic. Okay, bye for now.